Is that better? Okay. Sorry, how are you guys doing? So I'm really excited to be here. I'm Chris Mutchler. I'm going to talk about, I work on the internal cloud team within VMware. I'm going to talk about today how we've gone about automating things with Ansible over the last 6 months. And I hope you're excited. So, like I said, I'm a cloud architect on the VMware internal private cloud team on VCDX 257. I'm on Twitter. You can find me, and a lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about today is actually on my blog and GitHub and everything. So, I'm excited. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the journey that our corporate IT team has taken over the last, really about the last 4 years. It's been hyper-focused on Ansible and Python the last 5 or 6 months. And then I'm going to talk to you about our infrastructure as code journey, why we chose Ansible, and then more importantly, some of our open source contributions so that all of you in the room here can take what I'm going to talk about today and actually leverage it yourselves in your SDDC environments. So just to give you a little bit of an idea about our scale, so our corporate IT, our internal private cloud, we're across 9 data centers. We have about 6,000 ESXi hosts at any given time, and we have over 200,000 virtual machines that are provisioned. If you've ever taken a hands-on lab, all of the hands-on labs are hosted on our environment. So this week is our biggest week of the year. We'll churn somewhere between 25 and 30,000 virtual machines a day within the environment. So we're leveraging NSX across all of our environment, and more of our environments are going to vSAN storage. So we have close to 9 petabytes on vSAN today. And this has been a pretty big change for us over the last 18 months or so. And we are 100% virtualized, so we don't have any, what you would expect from a VMware internal private cloud team, right? We don't have any bare metal systems running anywhere, but you know, good thing to kind of call out. So when we talk about automation and the importance of it, you can see from our scale that if we didn't have automation, we couldn't do any of this. And so it's been a big challenge for us to make sure that we have this in place over the last few years. So when I talk about our journey, the big thing to understand is that, you know, when we started out 4 or 5 years ago as a team, we were doing everything manual, right? We were going click, click, next, 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 finish, just like everybody else. And then once we got familiar with the process of deploying the SDDC stacks and doing upgrades and everything, then we started to script some of these things, right? We were using Ruby, we were using Python, we were using PowerShell, whatever tool was out there, but we had a mix. And it really depended on where was the team located, what was their favorite language to program in, and there was really kind of no governance around any of it. And then as we got better with the scripts, then we said, hey, and this is about 4 years ago, we're like, look, we really need a framework, an automation framework that we're going to use to be able to do this. So at the time we started to develop this in-house automation framework. We refer to it as Umbrella because it's an umbrella for everything, vCloud Director, vSphere, vCenter, and so forth. But it was based on Ruby, and it worked really well for us for a time. The challenge being every time a new release of vSphere came out, then our automation team had to go back and make sure that the framework had all of that functionality, right? So we spent more time working on the framework instead of working on the automation. And so then we started to see things in our operations team suffer because of it, because they were like, look, I'm waiting for the development team to give me the functionality that I need that just came out in vSphere 6 or vSphere 6.5, but I have to do an upgrade this weekend, or I have to do a new deployment this weekend. So then they end up going back to a hodgepodge of the scripts, you know, and some manual tasks and everything. And that just really didn't work at scale. The other thing that really kind of became a driving force for this automation effort this year is that over the next 18 months, we have to retire and refresh about $40 million worth of equipment, because our team has only been around for about 5 years, so we're starting to finally see that 5-year refresh cycle. And as we look at like how are we going to refresh $30 or $40 million worth of hardware in an 18-month period, we were like, we can't do it unless we have everything automated. And so that was this year, that was the focus. So we had already started leveraging some open source tools like Puppet. We were using a little bit of Ansible on the networking side, and we were using some Jenkins for automated testing and so forth. But we realized that, again, it was just kind of a mixture of things, and there was really kind of no cohesive vision, and there was no cohesiveness to it all. And so this year, we started with this automation first. We went and blew up the teams. We had rather siloed teams. We had networking guys, we had storage guys, we had compute guys. We said, that's not where the industry's going, so we're going to blow it up. We're going to focus on DevOps. We're going to focus on everybody's going to program, and we're going to really just start focusing in on this. And so that's where this infrastructure as code thing goes. So from an architecture team perspective, the impetus on us was to make sure that we had all of the documentation, all of the settings documented that you needed across the environment, so that then the Cloud Ops team, the SREs, could take that information and actually codify it in the code. And so that's been our big effort these last 6 months or so. So it kind of hinted at this, but it was really more than just about the infrastructure as code part, though. I mean, that's like one step, right? Getting everything into some sort of programming language. The rest of it was we were really trying to change how our Cloud Ops teams did their day-to-day work, right? I mean, right now the way it had been working was, an alert would come in, somebody would say, okay, do I have a run book for this? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But a lot of times it was manual steps, and we wanted that to change. We're trying to get to this point where an alert comes in, there is a run book, but there's also a piece of automation that's going to go and rectify that for you. And so one of the things that we really realized that we needed to do was, instead of having to maintain our own automation framework, we wanted to leverage something that the community had for us, so that we could spend more time doing the automation and less time doing the maintenance of the framework itself or the tool. And so that's where Ansible came in. So we decided we were going to do this thing, we were going to do it with Ansible, and then we were going to leverage a couple internal CIDB type things that most organizations have. But the other key factor for us was not just that we were going to use Ansible, but that we wanted to take what we were using and we wanted not just to Ansible, like the Ansible modules themselves, but we wanted people to be able to leverage our playbooks and our roles and everything that we were using. And when we do identify gaps, because we have identified a few in the Ansible modules that are available today, we wanted to enhance those modules and then contribute them back up. And so this was really important for us. And finally, I mean, right now we've been focused mostly on the day zero, right? The stand-up of all of the infrastructure. But we're realizing that there's a lot of potential there for us to be able to manage the day one and day two operations. How do you get a tenant inside your SDDC environment through Ansible? How do you upgrade vCenter the next time there's an upgrade through Ansible and execute all of those things? So that's really where we're going, and it's not going to be a short journey. I imagine it's going to take us another 12 to 18 months to get the full breadth of day zero all the way to day two fully automated. But I think the biggest thing that we've been able to accomplish is that we've done this on a really short time period, and a lot of that goes to because of how easy it is to leverage Ansible. So like I said, we decided on Ansible. One of the things that we wanted to do, and I hinted at this earlier, was we wanted to make sure that there was clear direction for the SREs. So we were saying Ansible first for automation. If something didn't exist in Ansible, then we would use Python to write a module that Ansible could leverage. And part of this was that we didn't want an engineer to say like, well, here I heard about this new cool language. I just want to learn this language, so let me write something that's going to be critical to our operations teams in this language that nobody else understands. Because unfortunately that had happened numerous times in the past. So the other thing we did was, we wanted to give people a container that they could use and execute for development that would have all of the libraries that they would need built into it, so they didn't have to worry about what libraries do I have to pull in to make sure that I have everything. And then it also helps so that when we go into our CI/CD pipelines, we can leverage the same container. So if you worked on the code during the sprint, you committed your code up to the tree, then when we execute the user tests against it, everybody's operating from the same playing field. And that's really helped streamline things as well. We did recognize, though, that there would be instances where we needed to make an exception, and so we kind of defined an exception process for people, but we just did say that it would be a case-by-case basis. We wouldn't just make an exception because somebody asked for it. They had to be able to show technical reasons behind it, and document those reasons. What is the technical debt that we're taking on if we're making an exception? Create those stories so that they get prioritized in our backlog, so we can say, hey, we did this thing through a raw API call today because there's no support in Ansible. you know, or hey, I did write this one thing in, say, Ruby, but I've recognized that, you know, here's the things that I'm going to have to do in the future to make it work with Python or Ansible out of the thing. And then, like I said, no more resume fodder, right? So I mean, some people really didn't like it, right? They're like, I just want to be able to use whatever language I want, and that's fine at times. But really, the vision is that everybody needs to be using the same things. It also made it easier when we changed the organization of the team this year to be able to say, listen, we recognize that some guys don't know any Python, some guys don't know any Ruby. So if we've picked one language, then the management then can make a focus of making sure that those guys are getting trained up, right? And then they don't have to train somebody on 5 different things. They only have to train them on 2 things, right? Understand how Ansible works, understand how Python works. If you can do those 2 things, then you as an SRE are going to be able to be successful within the team. And so that was a key and an important thing for us to do. So as we looked at the landscape, when we talked about standing up an entire SDDC environment, we kind of we identified these 5 things, like pillars, I guess, or key areas. One being like the prerequisites. So here we're talking about things like creating DNS records in info blocks, creating service accounts in AD, being able to, you know, allocate the IP blocks that are going to get used by the ESXi management VLAN or the vSAN VLAN, right? All of these things. And then we said, okay, from the physical infrastructure perspective, what are we going to want to automate? We're going to want to automate our out-of-band network, right? Where our iDRAC or our ILO exists. We wanted to be able to then automate our, we're a Cisco shop, so we leverage a lot of Nexus. So we wanted to be able to automate the in-band network, right? The stand-up of the thing. Because again, we were trying to look at this holistically, the whole picture. We didn't want to just Ansible-ize, that's the term we've been using, Ansible-ize the virtual infrastructure. We wanted to do the whole thing, the network, and, you know, the physical network, the physical out-of-band network, and all of the virtual network pieces. And then the third pillar, and this is really where the focus, the next 2 have kind of been the focus, the virtual infrastructure, things like ESXi, vSAN, all of those things you would expect. And then our virtual network, because like I said, we're an enormous NSX-V customer today. I think we're the largest. We have somewhere over like 200,000 VXLAN logical switches in existence across our thing. So it's enormous. But so being able to use Ansible for the virtual network, and then the ancillary, kind of the 5th pillar where we haven't gotten to yet, but you know, all of the supporting services. How can we use Ansible to stand up a log insight cluster? How can we use Ansible to do Xenos for our monitoring? How can we do, you know, all of those extra things that you need to be able to support the SDDC itself? So really though, what we did was, so this was kind of like the key areas that we identified, and then kind of focused in on the middle 3 there, and then we kind of broke them up into blocks. And by breaking them up into blocks like this let us be able to say, what are the steps that we have to take to stand up one of our environments today, the common steps. And then we were able to basically create stories in Jira for all of these things. And then we can use this map kind of as a heat map. And then as we've made progress, right, things go from red to green, and then it helps us be able to see that we're executing on the vision. But you can see, you know, there's a lot of different steps here. It's a complex picture. And actually, even since I did this slide, this has grown, right, as we've been executing on the project through the various sprints that the team has been taking on. Somebody will be like, oh, I need to do this other thing, or hey, we forgot to think about this, or we want to split this up. So this has grown, but this is still, it gives you an idea of just how complex it is. So Ansible. So today, how many of you are using Ansible today, just by show of hands? Okay, fair number of you. Are any of you using Ansible within your VMware environments? A couple of you? Okay. So you're probably familiar then. So Ansible does have about 50 to 60 current modules themselves that are built into Ansible. These are community supported modules. Some of them are older than others, depending on when they were written. One of the big ones that we noticed was that the vSAN module was rather outdated. It was written for vSAN 5.5, like the initial release. So if you're talking about wanting to be able to do things like all-flash vSAN, compression, deduplication, all of those things, the module that's there today doesn't have support for it. And that was one of the things that we identified as that thing of we want to take this, make it better, and contribute it back. So just last week, actually, our internal team, we finished our vSAN module, works with 6.5 and 6.7. We're doing some regression testing with 6.0, and then our plan is to actually get it contributed up to, at least on the VMware GitHub page. The ultimate goal is to get it included inside of Ansible. So that'll be coming out soon. So if you're using vSAN, all-flash vSAN, you'll be able to see that support. And that was important for us. Some of the other things that we noticed, things like network IOC, or NIOC, right? IO control for the network, right? That wasn't in there. So we wrote a module for Ansible for that. That's going to be going in. If you do VM kernel interfaces, the current version, it'll only let you create a VM kernel interface on a standard switch, not a DVS. So one of our engineers, hacked that out in like an hour. And so these are all the things that we feel are important, right? They're
HA cluster options.
Say it again.
HA cluster options.
Yeah, there are some of those things actually in that Chaperone project underneath the VMware site, GitHub site. Some of that stuff is there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some things that you look at, but that's the beauty about the community, is that somebody can say, hey, I know how to do this thing. I might not know how to do X, Y, and Z, but I can at least do X. They can do it. Yeah, and it does, and it happens fast. So that's great. So, and then VMware does have a bunch of Ansible modules themselves. The top link is just to where VMware's GitHub site is, but underneath there, there's an NSXV Ansible module. So if you're using NSXV, I was just going to say, somebody just, I think I saw it on Twitter just a couple days ago. So there's also an NSXT Ansible module now, which is awesome. Excuse me. And so if you're doing NSXV or NSXT, the modules are there. Again, like the NSXV, this is kind of what got it started for our team. Our networking guys last year were like, look, we want to automate more of our network physical in the NSX side. And so they were using Ansible to do some of the Cisco things because they're Cisco modules. And then they realized, hey, there's an NSX Ansible module, but we found that it had holes. So we started contributing some things back to that, things like DFW, being able to do IP pools within ECMP edges and so forth. And so that was really kind of what kicked it off. And we saw how quickly our network team was able to take Ansible and start leveraging it for our deployments. And then when we shared that with the broader team, that was really kind of what kicked off the adoption of it. And then there is a Chaperone project. If you look for, it's like VMware/Chaperone under GitHub. That comes from one of our PSO organizations. They have a pretty specific use case for the environment that they're building, but it's a good way to be able to see some examples of how we're leveraging Ansible in other places. Like Brady said here, there's some HA configuration options that are there in the Chaperone project that you can leverage as well. And this is really kind of just the start for us as we go about doing this. You're going to start seeing more and more come out of our internal private cloud team that's going to get published up. We're working through the details of being able to get our own space in VMware's GitHub spot, but that you're going to be able to get those things. So this all sounds really great, right? A lot of nodding heads. But you were like, oh wait, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. But I already talked about some of this. So yes, we wrote the vSAN module. We got a bunch of playbooks and everything rolled up, and then we did some stuff with the Ansible. But like the top thing says there, life's easier if you have the source code, right? So we've gone ahead and we've published some of the things already today up on GitHub, so you can grab roles and playbooks. Some of those enhanced modules aren't there yet, but they'll be coming soon. And so you can go out and get these things. And then also I've got a demo that you can see some of this in action where it goes ahead and and I don't know how am I doing on time? Oh, I got time. I can show the demo. Perfect. I wasn't sure how much time I would. The other one? Sure. Yeah, hang on. I'll go back. There you go. Everybody good? Okay, so let me show a demo here. I didn't know if I'd have time or not, so. Okay, so I'll talk, there's no sound or anything, right? But I'll talk you through it. So what we've done here is, see on the right-hand side, well, no, you're left, sorry. So this is a vCenter server that actually did get deployed using Ansible, but I didn't show it here. And there are a couple hosts in there. So essentially, the only thing that we haven't been able to figure out how to do with Ansible yet is that first host. The first host is the hard thing. So we do still install one host in the management cluster manually over iDRAC. But once it's installed, there's a Python script William Lamb published a year or so ago that we leverage. It bootstraps vSAN for us, and then we can use an Ansible playbook that actually deploys the vCenter server appliance to that first host. And then once that's there, then we can do all of the rest of this. And just, I guess, for reference, so we're using Razor to do our bare metal deployment of, or to automate our bare metal deployment of ESXi. So after that first host is, you can see there's a DHCP server there. That DHCP server is local to the environment for Razor to be able to leverage, and then Razor can image all of the rest of the hosts for us. So this is the management cluster that we're setting up. There are a couple hosts in there that I had added at another time. What this playbook is essentially going to do is it's going to add a couple more hosts to the cluster. It's going to create their VM kernel interfaces. It's going to migrate them to a DVS that exists. Okay, and then it's going to configure a lot of the advanced settings that we want, things for like the vSAN swap provisioning and so forth, force provisioning, and some other things. But the playbook does all of this for us automatically. And it happens pretty quickly too. So I did speed this up a bit. And we're using Ansible's Vault for storing encrypted passwords and so forth. One thing we did notice as we were doing this is that when you're migrating a host from a virtual standard switch to a DVS switch, if you try and get Ansible to do all of the hosts in the cluster at the same time, it'll fail. But if you do them serially through the Ansible playbook, it'll do that no problems. And then once that's done, and that's actually what it's doing right now, and that's why it's actually kind of slow, is because instead of doing all of the settings across all of the hosts in the cluster, you can see the bottom two are still in maintenance mode right now. It does that part serially, but then once everything else is actually all in parallel, which is one of the beauties of Ansible. And then as it finishes up here, it'll take the hosts and take them out of maintenance mode, and that's kind of when you know that playbook is done. There we go. So now it's migrating the kernel interfaces. It does some configuration on the standard switch, and then it's doing the next host. And this is the slow part. But this video, so I've got to kind of condense this video down to about 5.5 minutes. But when I did it like this end to end, it was 30 minutes. And what it had done is it had added two hosts. It had created the DVS for me, did all of the VM kernel interfaces, the migration, all of the advanced settings. And then you'll see here, then what I did was it deploys an NSX vManager, does all of the configuration, things like syslog, DNS servers, NTP, all of that stuff. It registers the NSX manager with the vCenter server, and then it deploys 3 controllers for you, all the way end to end. And that was, like I said, like less than 30 minutes. So we've really, and that's what it's going to do now. You're going to see it's screaming across because I think this is like 8x, but it deploys the OVA using OVF tool just through Ansible. And then once it powers it on, it waits for it to be responsive over VMware tools. Once it sees it's responsive, then it goes in and does that SSO registration and vCenter registration inside of the NSX manager. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are using NSX? A few of you? Okay. V or T? V. V? Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, here I'm going to show you. I'll log into the NSX manager. And then you can go over to the Manage the vCenter. You can see that it's entered to that, and then it shows you that it's configured. The syslog, the remote syslog server, you can specify UDP or TCP, and then it'll configure 1 or 2 DNS servers as you need, and the search domains and everything. Just like that, quick as can be. And then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and deploy the controllers. So you can see a controller here. You can go over to the installation screen. You can kind of see it screaming by over there. And this was actually the longest step. It took a while to deploy the controllers, like 12 or 13 minutes. But we're talking about, we've gone from an engineer having to do this manually or even using some of our automation where we take hours and hours, and we're going to be able to stand up a whole management cluster in an hour and a half or less. Once that I'll caveat, right? Once that first host is there, but it's been a significant improvement for us. So yeah, there's the first one, and then it goes through just like NSX does its thing, does the next one, same thing, waits for it to come up all the way to the end. And I think that's the exciting part of the demo. So I'll let it run in the background. Are there questions though? Can I take some questions? I don't know if there's a mic, so maybe just talk real loud.
As far as the NSX integration and stuff, we do a ton of guest introspection and microseg. Can we do that here?
So the microsegment, yes. I'm not sure about I don't know if the module today has the guest introspection, no.
The microseg is great.
The microsegmentation is there. If you look on, it's github.com/VMware/NSX Ansible. That's the NSXV. And if you don't see something in there, open up a known issue. Myself, a couple of the guys on our team are contributors to the module, and so if it's something that we can knock out, we'll do that. Yeah, you're welcome.
So that's for anything, so where functionality in NSX might be missing from an Ansible module.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So if you've got NSX functionality that might be missing from an Ansible module, but it is, let's say, within Python or the API,
yes,
we can log that request there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've been doing, what some of us have been doing in our spare time, because this is fun stuff, is, I'll have the SDK open in one screen, and then I'll have my Python code open in the other, and I try to say, okay, I've got an hour today, what can I work on type thing. Yes, and then put it out to GitHub for everybody to use.
You're trying to get that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry. Oh, the question was,
NSX functionality that might be missing from an Ansible module, and then what they do to get around that.
yeah. So obviously, like some of the first things that we started contributing back were because we needed them, right? And we've gotten a lot of what we needed to be there done, kind of. Like one of the things I did just last week was like in the NSX manager, being able to do the syslog and being able to like add a user role so that like our global admins in AD would have admin rights. That was missing. The first thing we did was somebody was like, hey, I can just do it using the Ansible URI thing. It's an API call, real easy. And they were like, well, that's tech debt. And I was like, well, how much time would it take me? I think it took me like 45 minutes to write it, test it, and then get it upstream. So right now, yeah, very much so. A lot of these things are based off of what we need as an internal team. That's kind of where what kind of kickstarts. But there's things that you need as a customer, and you think if you can't do it yourself and want to contribute it, then if you log a known issue, it's something we can look at. And I got like 2.5 minutes. I'm happy to answer some more questions though.
Do you have a rough timescale on where it gets from your GitHub to an official Ansible module?
I don't yet. Actually, I'm going to talk to the Ansible guys tomorrow. I have a meeting with them because that's something that's new to us. So VMware has a process for us to be able to contribute code upstream that we have to follow. Ansible is one of like the pre-approved projects, so we know that we can as employees. It's just figuring out what we need to kind of inroads on the Ansible side to meet and greet, shake hands, that kind of thing. So, okay, well that's everything I've got. I'll plug one more thing before I go. My coworker John Tompkins is he's going to be here at 4 o'clock. So if you want to know a lot more about how we automated NSX and we automated Cisco and all of our physical network using Ansible, John's going to be talking about that today. I believe it's at 4:15 here. So if you're interested in learning some more about what we've been doing, he'll be here. So thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.